so I won't be able to make the video recording of my face, but I swear it's me. You can see me on the intro screen anyway. My name is Joshua Helston, and I attended Gustavus from 1996 through the year 2000. I graduated in 2000, summa cum laude, with a degree in mathematics, honors mathematics, and honors philosophy. And while I was at Gustavus, a few interesting things about my time there was, first thing, that was my very first email address. So I know a lot of students nowadays actually have email when they're in high school, but I don't know if I was just tech slow, but I really didn't have my first email addresses when I first enrolled at Gustavus. It's a kind of interesting fact. Another fact, between 1996 and 2000, I was there for the 1998 tornado, which is an interesting little tidbit, although technically I was home for spring break like most of the students were, but 1998 tornado. And the final interesting little tidbit is that I was also there for the Y2K bug, the switch from the year 1999 to the year 2000. And so related to that, a couple interesting things that you might consider. I'm a bit of a number file, if you couldn't tell. Not a number phobe, definitely. And so here are some information, some interesting dates that occurred while I was at Gustavus, and see if you can figure out why they're interesting. November 19th, 1999, and finally February 2nd in the year 2000. So if anybody's curious about what's interesting about these dates while I was at Gustavus, please feel free to send me an email and I'll fill you in with the details. Okay, while I was at Gustavus, after I finished at Gustavus, I should say, I was fortunate enough to be accepted at UCLA. So after Gustavus, I went for graduate school to UCLA, which is of course University of California at Los Angeles, and I went there for mathematics. So I was a mathematician, mathematics. And interestingly, my field of study in mathematics is very, very philosophical, very foundational. I'm interested in mathematical logic and set theory, and my interests in philosophy were not at all mathematical. Philosophy and mathematics is interesting to me, but that was not what I was actually mostly interested in. I'm actually more interested in philosophy of religion, philosophy of art, aesthetics, and I really loved existentialism. I think that was really mind-opening. So anyway, at UCLA at mathematics, their mathematics department, I was able to complete my master's degree in about a year. So 1 year in, I was done with my master's degree. And then for the next 3 years, I kept on working towards my PhD, including passing my qualifying exam in mathematical logic and set theory. And unfortunately, after 3 years, I was not able to find a dissertation problem that I could complete, and my funding was cut, and so I did not have any other funding. And the cost of living in Los Angeles is way higher than I ever expected, and it's much higher than Minnesota. So I actually ended up having to throw out my application and try to find a job while I was living out here. And that was where I was fortunate enough to find a position at Mount St. Mary's University, although at that time it was Mount St. Mary's College. And so at Mount St. Mary's University, and along with some other part-time places too, I was working essentially as an instructor, just doing math classes for whoever needed it. So how am I thinking about my philosophy major now? So of course I went into mathematics specifically, but the philosophy major has been very life-altering for me. I like to say that my philosophy major has made me dangerous at every cocktail party, because it's enabled me to be able to think about things very, very critically. So when I hear a new idea, or when there's something that's creative or outside the box, or is not something that I'm used to, I use my critical thinking skills from the philosophy major, and thanks to all the faculty members at Gustavus for helping me to cultivate this, and it allows me to be able to communicate to people about ideas that I normally wouldn't, or I don't know if I would have been able to without that kind of training or background. So in particular, when I am at the Mount here, I'm in the math department, of course. I teach a lot of classes there, but I'm also involved in many, many committees that are changing the university-wide kind of policies. So one of those committees in particular is the IRB, which is the research committee. So when people have independent research that they want to perform, it has to go through a committee to be approved. And so I get to use my critical thinking skills and see the ideas that are going around and and make sure that they're safe for everybody. In addition to that, I'm also on what's called the ATF. That's not tobacco and firearms here. This is the Assessment Task Force. So because of my background mathematically in the statistics, and then philosophically in the ability to look for patterns and think critically about different things, I'm able to look at assessment data and try to assess how we can better move forward into the future. And finally, just this last semester has been very exciting for us, because we're starting to institute a first-year seminar with a regrouping of our general studies curriculum. And one of the ideas for the first-year seminar is to really emphasize the liberal arts and the interdisciplinary research and ideas that are necessary to make really, really successful and exciting research for students. So one of the examples that I put forth there is I'd like to teach a class that was kind of based on my honors thesis from undergrad, which was Metamath and Dogmatics, and it kind of looks at math and religion and art and intertwines them all together.